If I say fried chicken, you probably see in your mind one of those typical red restaurants of the KFC franchise, with their big buckets full of chicken. And you also probably picture the face of Colonel Sanders, the icon of KFC. Everybody knows this face of an older man with a white beard and glasses. But very few people know the story of Colonel Sanders, and it is a rather sad story. The story of a long life, mostly filled with struggle, failure, poverty, and bankruptcy. The story of somebody who started having success when he was well over 60. But the story of Colonel Sanders teaches us something that is very useful to all of us. Something that is actually essential. Resilience. The art of never giving up despite facing one failure after the other. And if you're struggling right now and you're thinking about giving up, you better listen to this story. You better listen to the story of Colonel Sanders. And by the way, we'll also find out why they called him the Colonel, and it's not what you think. All of that being said, let's dive in. But before we get started, please hit the subscribe button down there and activate the notification bell to never miss a new video. Harlan David Sanders was born in 1890 in a modest farm family in Indiana. When Sanders was only 5 years old, his father died, and his mother had to start working in a tomato can factory to feed the family. When the mother was working, Harlan Sanders, who was the oldest of the family, had to take care of the two younger siblings, and among other things, he cooked for those two younger siblings. He learned how to cook at an early age, and he became quite good at it, and being born in the south of the United States, he learned how to cook fried chicken. Unfortunately for him, he wasn't nearly as brilliant in school as he was for cooking, and he had to drop out at the age of 12. He went on to work in various farms, and later he went away to live with his uncle in Indianapolis. There, he had very different jobs, such as horse carriage painter, farmhand, streetcar conductor, or cleaning the ashes of trains. And then he moved to Alabama.
Alabama!
At the age of 16, the young Sanders had already developed a pretty tough and volatile personality. Some people called him a bullhead. In Alabama, he worked for a while as a fireman, up until the moment that he got fired for insubordination. I personally find it pretty funny because, you know, firemen are supposed to put out fires, and he got fired as a fireman. Yeah. Anyways, moving on. Sanders, who was already married and had kids, moved to Tennessee to keep working as a fireman. At the same time, he started studying law by correspondence because he aspired one day to become a lawyer. But he got fired. Again. Because he got into a fight with a colleague. But he overcame that setback pretty quickly because shortly after, he could start practicing law. He could finally earn a decent living and he could finally provide to his family. And he was on the right track to a successful career in law. But after 3 years, he got fired. Again. Because he got into a fight with a client. Again. That represented a low point in his life, so much so that his family could not live with him anymore. His reputation and his legal career being destroyed, he had to start to work at a very different job. And he started working as a life insurance salesman, where, guess what? He got fired. Again. Because he got into a fight with a client. Again. In 1920, Sanders was 30 years old, and so far, he seemed to be a serial loser. A guy who couldn't keep a job and could not provide to his family. But he didn't let that discourage him to start his first entrepreneurial venture, to start his first business. He started a ferry boat company which operated a single boat on the Ohio River between Jeffersonville and Louisville. It was an instant success, and a few years later, Sanders sold the business for $22,000, which are more or less $350,000 in today's dollar value. We can say that it was the first success in his life after many and many failed jobs. As you can imagine, he was very enthusiastic and he used all of the money that he made with the ferry boat company to create a new business, a business that would manufacture acetylene lamps. Acetylene, acetylene, well, written like this. But failure is going to knock on his door. Again. Because right when he launched his product, a company called Delco launched an electric lamp, which was in all aspects much better than Sanders' lamp. Being broke again, he was back working in a regular job. Entering into the 1930s and with the advent of the automobile in the United States, Sanders flared the next opportunity. He got himself a gas station in Kentucky, and next to the gas station, he opened a restaurant to feed all those hungry travelers, and people loved his fried chicken that he could make in a very special way. But he had a problem. He had a very aggressive competitor, Matt Stewart, who owned another gas station nearby. And this guy repainted the signs that directed traffic to Sanders' gas station. And you probably guessed it already with all the fights that he got into, that Sanders was hot-headed, to say the least. But there, he took it to the next level. Sanders and two of his employees got into a gunfight with this competitor. Matt Stewart was wounded, but before getting shot, he killed one of Sanders' employees. As a result, Stewart went to jail for a long time. Sanders lost one of his employees, who was also one of his friends. Of course, that was really sad and very tragic, but the bright side of this whole incident is that now he had no competitor. He was the only gas station in the entire region. The gas station became very successful, but it was nothing compared to the restaurant that was just next to it. Travelers loved his food, and the restaurant was acclaimed by the food critique, and especially the chicken. Sanders became a local celebrity, and it is at that moment that he got the title of Colonel. It has nothing to do with the military rank. Colonel was a honorific title given to the people who had accomplished the biggest achievements in the state of Kentucky. It was at that moment that the persona of Colonel Sanders, as we all know it today, was born. From that moment onward, Colonel Sanders started dressing all in white with a black tie to represent the hospitality of the South of the United States by dressing like a gentleman. The now Colonel Sanders was very successful for most of the 1930s decade, so much so that he acquired a motel nearby his gas station alongside a restaurant with 140 seats. At the same time, he started working on an interesting innovation. He observed that people loved his fried chicken, but there was one problem. Preparing the fried chicken took a lot of time. Lots of time. Preparing the fried chicken took as long as 30 to 40 minutes. And as you can imagine, for travelers eating in a motel or a gas station, it was very inconvenient. And one day, Colonel Sanders discovered something that was used extensively in France, but that was almost unknown in the US. A steamer. A steamer allows you to cook boiled food much faster than usual because it uses all the steam again to boil back the food that is inside the steamer. And Sanders wanted to create his own steamer. A steamer that worked with oil so that he could fry his chicken much faster. And he succeeded. After much trial and error, he could create an oil steamer to fry his chicken much faster and having many more happy customers. But failure is going to knock on his door again. When the Second World War started, gasoline started to be rationed, which completely dried up the tourism in the state of Kentucky. And to make matters even worse, a bit later, highways were constructed, which completely diverted the traffic from his gas station, his two restaurants, and his motel. Colonel Sanders had to file for bankruptcy, and he lost his two restaurants, his gas station, and his motel, and he had to go back to a normal job. He worked as an employee up until his retirement at 62 years old. He wasn't happy with his social security check, so he decided to hit the pavement. He took his steamer, he took his chicken recipe, and decided to sell it all across the United States. His offer was simple. If you used his steamer that he created plus his chicken recipe that everybody loved, well, you would have to pay him 5 cents per chicken. It's not very clear how many times he got rejected. Some people say that he got rejected hundreds of times, and some people even say that he got rejected more than 1,000 times. But here's the thing, he kept going. He never gave up. He drove and drove and drove for kilometers and kilometers in the United States up until one person finally said yes. The first KFC franchise opened in Salt Lake City in Utah, and this restaurant, by the way, still exists. After getting this first client, Colonel Sanders kept going, and slowly but steadily, more and more people were buying his chicken recipe, who became franchisees, just like McDonald's. Eventually, in 1962, at 72 years old, after 10 years of selling his chicken recipe across the United States, he decided to sell the business. Since it was a nice business, giving a healthy profit, a group of investors offered $2 million to buy the business. And that was a lot of money in 1962, around $19 million in today's value. This group of investors could smell the great potential of the business and decided to scale the business all across the nation. And they offered Colonel Sanders to remain as the brand ambassador. And that's why the face of Colonel Sanders became the logo of the company and why we saw so many commercials with the Colonel Sanders. This group of investors scaled the business very fast and they took this company public a few short years later. Fun fact, Colonel Sanders didn't like the chicken that they later made at KFC. He said that they were cheaply made and didn't respect the original recipe. It went as far as him opening a new restaurant to make high-quality chicken again that respect the recipe. And this restaurant, by the way, still exists also in the city of Shelbyville, Kentucky. He remained a bullhead up until the end. Colonel Sanders died in 1980 at the age of 90. After many decades of struggle, failure, and rejection, he could retire and die as a wealthy and successful man, leaving behind a business and a persona known in the entire planet. But I think Colonel Sanders left something even more important: inspiration. The story of Colonel Sanders goes to show us the importance of never ever giving up. I know it sounds cliche to say that, but persistence and never giving up plays a big important role in success. Much bigger than what you imagine, because most people don't fail because their ideas are flawed or because their business plan is flawed or whatever. They'll fail because they just give up too early. People give up too early because we are used to have instant gratification, to put an effort into something and reap the rewards immediately. But when you want to accomplish great things, create great businesses or become a superstar employee or whatever that may be, it takes time. You don't have to think in weeks, days or months. You have to think in years or in decades. As you can see, if Colonel Sanders had given up, he would not be the Colonel Sanders that we all know today. He is the Colonel Sanders because he never gave up, despite having millions of opportunities to give up. As you could see with the KFC business, he got rejected hundreds, if not thousands of times, but he kept driving all along the United States. He kept going, selling his chicken recipe and his steamer. And then it took him a decade to make KFC such a successful business that it could be bought for $2 million. So if you want to achieve big things, I can tell you that it's probably going to take much longer than what you expect, and you're going to get rejected much more often than what you expect. And that's okay. If it takes you time or you get rejected, it doesn't mean that you are bad as a business person, as a superstar employee, or whatever. It's just part of the game. So if you're struggling right now because you lost your job, your business is not taking off, a client turned you down, whatever the reason might be, if you're struggling right now and you're thinking about giving up, remind yourself of the story of Colonel Sanders. And I don't know from which location you're watching this video, but if you're able to watch this video, it tells me one thing: you are much more advantaged than the Colonel Sanders back in his time. You probably have more education, more support, more resources, and more opportunities. The only thing that is lacking if you're struggling right now is having the Colonel Sanders resilience. All of that goes to say that if Colonel Sanders could make it, so can you. And whenever you doubt that, I invite you to watch this video again.